Assalamu alaikum, good evening, and welcome to tonight's episode of Talking Point. I'm your host, Syed Niaz Ahmed. With us today is a very eminent journalist, historian, writer, and author of several books, Mr. Syed Badrul Ahsan. He has been on our show before. Very kindly, he has given us time today. Sorry for the loss of a few minutes because of some technical problems. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, thank you. It's good to be back after a long time. How have you been?
Not too bad, not too bad. Well, in these very uncertain times, we are thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for keeping us alive and kicking. Alhamdulillah. I really wanted to talk to you about a few things that's been in the news. The first was Palestine and diplomacy and how well and or how badly some of the countries are handling their diplomatic problems, quote unquote, and also definitely pandemic, which is the raging phenomena these days. In 2020, Reporters Without Borders, that is RPS, I think, report RSF, dedicated or decided to safeguard independent journalism and published Press Freedom Index. And since then, perhaps, we have been talking about the right to know, right to print, and right to inform. In a very ludicrous statement, General Idi Amin had said that I can guarantee you the freedom of a speech, but I cannot guarantee you the freedom after a speech. That was laughed away by many, but not by those who suffered during his tenure. Incidentally, I did meet the gentleman at Jeddah Airport once. He was seeing off Louis Farrakhan, and I wanted to interview him, a short impromptu interview, but General Amin refused. Anyway, so recently an investigative journalist of Pratham Alo, I think, in Bangladesh, Rosina Islam, let's just put it mildly, she suffered at the hands of the authorities. I'm sure you have written a lot about the independence of journalism and freedom of speech. You have recently written about diplomacy and how diplomats handle things. How do you see this thing, how it was handled? Rosina Islam, and she had to suffer confinement for 6 hours, then she was arrested and she was sent to prison. And a 1923 act was dusted and used to arrest her, and then she was granted bail after 1 week of imprisonment. That is very unusual, isn't it? How do you see all this?
Well, it's very, very tragic and very disappointing. First of all, in this day and age, you bring into operation a law which is almost 100 years old, 98 years old to be exact, 1923, and you use it to employ it against a journalist who is only trying to do her work. So that is one complaint that we have, is this holdover of colonialism, British colonialism, that is still there. And since the partition of India in 1947, and especially since the emergence of Bangladesh in 1971, we have always been, successive governments have always been telling us of a modern approach to governance, of governance or government according to the will of the people. But then we have all these old colonial legacies still around. And of course, nobody mentions them, but now that the 1923 Act has been mentioned, has been used to punish, if I may use that word, Rosina Islam, that is ridiculous. You can't do that. British colonialism has gone. Pakistan is gone. We have the Independent People's Republic of Bangladesh, but we go back to all those nearly 100 years to punish a journalist for doing her work. Secondly, the way the Rosina Islam case was handled, say at the Ministry of Health, she has been writing a whole lot about corruption in the health ministry among the health authorities, and she has been those reports have been read avidly by people, and no one has been able to dispute those reports. Now that she went on her last visit, she went to the Ministry of Health to gather facts. That was only natural, because it is the responsibility of a journalist to gain as much news as possible in as many ways as possible.
Yes.
If we look at the Western journalists,
gone.
if you think of,
Rosina must have been invited to come, because normally you can't enter those buildings.
well, in Bangladesh, as in any other country, journalists have certain credentials which allow them to enter a government ministry or a government department, and I'm sure she went there on that basis, or again, as she put it, say after while she was being interrogated by these health ministry officials, that one of her sources had told her to come there. Now, that is also an accepted rule in journalism. Everywhere, anywhere in the world, there are sources upon which journalists work. If we think of these important cases, famous examples like the Watergate crisis, Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, they had their sources. And even after that, today in Europe, in India, in the UK, in the United States, journalists work on that basis. So she went there. That is, and the way she was treated, that was horrendous. I say it was horrendous because no government figure, right from the top to the bottom, no government figure has any right to hold any citizen, let alone a journalist, in confinement for 5.5 hours. Now they did that. That was a crime. They said that Rosina Islam was trying to steal documents. Why would a journalist try to steal documents? And they said that she was trying to photograph documents which were absolutely secret in nature, or state secrets. Now the point is, if state secrets can lie littered on the table of a PA to a government official, how are they treated as state secrets? Where was the PA? And why would he leave those state secrets spread out on the table? So these officials who ill-treated her, I think the way they filed a case after 5.5 long hours, they took her to Shahbag police station, and then the police station had her sent to Kashimpur jail. That was unacceptable. Equally unacceptable is the fact that these officials who confined her for 5.5 hours, they have got away with their act. Now this, I won't say this was a crime, but this was against the law. So you cannot hold any citizen, not even the simplest of citizens, on for 5.5 hours without any reason. And if you do, you have to explain why you did that. And if your explanation is not acceptable, then you are equally guilty of having committed a lapse in terms of the law. So finally, what happened to Rosina Islam can happen to anybody, can happen to you, can happen to me. But that shows the dark side of the way in which media freedom operates in our country, around the world today. We just have had the experience of President Lukashenko hijacking an airliner, forcing it to land, say, in Minsk, and arrest a journalist, say, Roman Protasevich. So, there are numerous examples. We can cite examples from anywhere, even in the West. Embedded journalism during the Gulf War, and again, news channels such as Fox News, which are constantly spreading lies, disseminating lies. So journalism is not in good shape anywhere in the world. But as far as Bangladesh is concerned, I think the Rosina Islam episode should be an opportunity, should be that particular moment in our journalism where all journalists should come together. Unfortunately, we don't have unity among journalists. There used to be a time 2 decades or even 3 decades ago, when our union was strong, when a journalist was dismissed, one simple journalist was dismissed from his job or sacked from his job, these unions, these journalist unions, they got together and they compelled the management to have him back or to explain why that person was dismissed. We don't have any that kind of union anymore. What we have are a set of unions divided along partisan political lines. So when you have partisan politics coming into your journalism, it's only politics that's coming in. Your journalism is as good as dead.
Right. Would you agree that BD Bangladesh Press Freedom ranking has declined because of the several issues, and one of them is violence by political activists?
Yes, yes, yeah, because it has declined, and as I said earlier, we are in a very precarious situation because, see, the rule in journalism in Bangladesh, as also I'm sure elsewhere, is that when you write something or when you have a comment to make, if a party is aggrieved, say if somebody is aggrieved, he can complain to your editor.
Right.
And then if the editor does not take action, he can complain to the press council. If the press council, if he's not satisfied with the judgment or decision of the press council, he can go to the court. But lately, over the last few years, what we have seen is that anybody who is aggrieved, who does not agree with the contents of a report,
right,
he simply takes recourse to one of these repressive laws, in this case the Digital Security Act.
Yep.
And then we have this horrible image of journalists being arrested, being handcuffed, being taken to jail, and that's it. So that is one point. The other point is, in the past we have had examples of editors of newspapers or chiefs of news outlets, even television, rising to the defense of their journalists. That culture has also gone. We don't see the editor in Bangladesh. I can tell you there have been examples of cartoonists, newspaper cartoonists,
right,
who have been accused of criminal activity by the authorities concerned. Instead of defending those cartoonists, their editors simply handed them over to the police to be taken to prison. Then there are also examples of journalists writing reports, and then they came under the onslaught of the authorities, the powers that be. In that case, too, the editor didn't come to the defense of a journalist. In fact, he dismissed the journalist and informed the authorities that we have dismissed him. So you see, the kind of journalism that we had in the 1950s, or even till the early 1970s, when editors were powerful, when editors
okay,
were
sir, we need to take a break here. When we come back, we'll pick up the thread. Okay, then? Thank you, viewers, for being with us, and we'll be back after this very short break. Don't go away. Welcome back. Just before the break, we were talking about the Bangladeshi situation with regards to journalists. We move to a different topic, Palestine. Mr. Badrul Hasan, you have written several articles about the political situation here and there. This word they use always when it comes to a war between or the killing machine of one country goes and kills others. They would very cleverly use the word conflict rather than the war to kind of hide the seriousness of the situation. Now this Israel-Palestine, or is it always it's always considered as a conflict, see, and all the world media refers to it, see, and then it is said that it is Hamas that is causing all the problems, you see. Maybe the Hamas is causing problems, you see, but who is suffering? The Palestinian people. Hamas may be a separate entity somewhere, but the people are suffering. Schools, hospitals are being bombarded, and Palestine has a very large young population, and they are the ones who are suffering. What is your view of this situation right now?
Now, when people talk of Hamas when Hamas is very conveniently described as a terrorist organization in the Middle East. Even the recent moves by the United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken
Yep.
About giving money for the reconstruction of Gaza. They pointed out that they would make sure that the money doesn't fall into the hands of Hamas. But it's all a matter of history. Before condemning Hamas, of course, if Hamas indulges in acts that are criminal in nature, for example, firing missiles into civilian territory in Tel Aviv, that is to be condemned, certainly. But when you look at Benjamin Netanyahu, for 11 nights, night after night, see hundreds and thousands of tons of bombs being dropped on Gaza, and Gaza is an enclave. See, the people of Gaza have been suffering for years. On the one hand, they cannot have free access because of Israel's restrictions.
Yep.
On the other hand, they cannot have free access because of restrictions put in place by Egypt. So they have been suffering, and Gaza has become, in the last many years, a huge ghetto in the world. So that is one issue that needs to be considered. How can you keep a people confined in an area only because you don't support the government, the people who lead them, in this case, Hamas? That is one point. And then, again, we must remember that since 1948, May 1948, 14 May 1948, when Israel was established, thousands of Palestinian families were displaced from their homes, and they have never been allowed to go back. Their descendants have never been allowed to go back to recover their homes. A few years ago, I read a book by Murid Barghouti, and the book was I Saw Ramallah, and that makes very pathetic reading. He went to Ramallah, he saw his old home, but he couldn't enter it because it was occupied by another family, in this case, a Jewish settler family. That is one point. Now, the other point is, if you are not willing to give the people of Gaza, the people of Palestine, the people of the occupied territories their rights, that is condemnable. It is as much condemnable as the fact that on occupied territory, occupied Arab territory, you're building hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of settlements, and the world is not saying anything. Of course, there are mild condemnations. The West, the United States particularly, and other European nations, they've condemned these settlements. But after that, following these condemnations, what action have they taken? If you look at these last 11 days, 11 days and 11 nights of Israeli terror on the people of Gaza,
Palestine.
nobody moved on Gaza and Palestine. Nobody moved to force Netanyahu to end his bombing. If you recall, in 1956, at the height of the Suez Crisis, when France, Britain, and Israel, three countries together attacked Egypt, it was President David Eisenhower who intervened, and he forced them to stop the war, to stop the attack on Egypt and withdraw. That was Eisenhower. Here we have Joe Biden. Everybody thought that he would be different from Donald Trump. Donald Trump recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. People thought President Biden would be different. He stayed very quiet. He waited for those 11 days and 11 nights until he and his administration were convinced that Netanyahu had successfully done his job, and then they welcomed these peace overtures. But this is hypocrisy. These are double standards. So I think action should be taken here. Serious note should be taken of it. But then, again, if you look at the OIC, organization like the OIC, where were they in all this crisis? Where were countries like Saudi Arabia, which has a very large presence of American troops? It hosts American soldiers. Where are these people? And now anybody who talks of the rights of Palestinians, say that is considered to be heresy. And at such moments, you actually miss people like Yasser Arafat. Mahmoud Abbas is a good person, is a good politician, but then he has not been very assertive, maybe because of his personality, or maybe because he feels that he's hamstrung by conditions here. But then these things can't go on, because if today you have bombed Gaza, if today you have bombed Palestine, and if you think that you've destroyed all those secret cells and tunnels and government offices of Hamas, if you are satisfied that is the end of the crisis, no, that is not the end of the crisis, because these bombs have fallen on children too. 67 children have died. The other children who live, who have survived, they will remember these acts of terror,
all
and
these
they will
killings.
grow up even more vociferous, even
Right.
more anti-Israel, and even more revolutionary.
Right.
So how are you going to stop them?
Well, it is very unfortunate. I mean, all these killings motivate the ones who are survivors, as you said, and then they will go on to try to do their bit to achieve back their homelands. See, now somebody can go to Ramallah or anywhere else and find somebody from Brooklyn is living in his house. The people who have been unsettled, driven away from their homes, won't even recognize their houses because it has been changed so much. See. We go to Bangladesh, and Bangladesh has been a great supporter of Palestine since the days of our great leader Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. See. And Bangladesh also has very cordial relations and advocates for an independent Palestinian state, and firmly believes that supports the establishment of a Palestinian state drawn on 1967 boundary with Jerusalem as the capital. That's music to our ears. But how do you see Bangladesh dropping the word, excluding Israel from the passport, the notation? See, now it says to bring the passport is international standards they have included, valid for all countries. And its officials have said that they have not recognized Israel, so anybody traveling to Israel on Bangladeshi passport will be punished. Probably they will use 1923 Act again. Now, Bangladesh does not have diplomatic relations with Taiwan, but its business is booming. Some 40 Taiwanese companies are operating in Bangladesh. They are producing brand names like Nike and Adidas shoes. Bangladesh imports petroleum, steel, cloth, and machines. So we really don't need to recognize a country to have any relation at all, you see. And whatever you write on your passport, you all still need a visa to go to other countries. The Taiwan thing has been solved. One can get a visa for Taiwan from either New Delhi or Bangkok. Similarly, the Taiwanese wishing to come to Bangladesh can get a visa from Bangkok, their embassy in Bangkok or New Delhi. So what we say, what we do are two different things. Your opinion,
Yes,
sir?
I think my opinion is very simple. First of all, I mean, removing that stipulation, all countries of the world except Israel, I think that was a good move. That was, in terms of international law, a passport should not have statements that militate against international diplomacy or modern diplomacy.
Okay.
So that is one good point. I think
Right.
it should have been done, because
Yeah.
personally, I've also been over the years, I've also been quite surprised why this stipulation should be there. Now
Yeah.
that it has gone, the Bangladesh government has decided to do
But
away with it. That's good.
my point
But
is
then
the
at the same-
timing of it is so critical, the timing.
Yes. We could argue about the timing. That could have happened later. Yes, you have a point. I would agree with you. The other point is, yes. Then, if your passport says, if your passport allows you to travel to any country in the world, say without any restriction, then why would you punish an individual who goes to a country that you don't recognize? So you mentioned Taiwan. Business deals with Taiwan. If Taiwan has been out of the in that sad situation since 1971, when the People's Republic of China entered the United Nations and improved relations with the United States. So if Taiwan can be there, if we can do business with Taiwan, if somebody goes to Israel and he comes back to Dhaka, why should he be punished? He's not committing a crime. He's going to a country, and your law or your passport does not say that you cannot go there. So this is again a kind of dichotomy. On the one hand, you tell a person you're free to go anywhere in the world. On the other, you tell him you've visited a particular country and you've committed a crime and you'll be punished. No, that is morally and diplomatically not acceptable. So I think the government should be very clear here about what it means. Why, if you are actually, if you really intend to prevent a Bangladeshi from traveling to Israel and then coming back, when he comes back, you intend to punish him, then why did you remove that stipulation? That could have stayed. See, that's my point.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That's very interesting, and I agree with you. My point is only that the timing was very bad, you see, and if the diplomats would understand that, and our chief diplomat would understand that this can create a bit of heartburning here and there amongst the large population of Muslims all over the world.
We need, in our country, we need diplomats who can offer good advice, who can offer sage advice. You know, instead of diplomacy is not an easy thing. So you have to have expertise in it. You have to offer advice to the government that may not be liked by the government, but then you should have the courage to tell the government that this is not good and that is good. This is bad, this is good. So, but then if you go on saying yes to everything, that is not diplomacy. See, diplomacy is to keep a country's best interests at heart. See, you defend your country in every way, but then you do that through upholding the principle that at the end of the day, it's your country which matters in the world.
That's the point, dear Dr. Badr Hasan Saab. Do you think that the non-aligned movement, we have been member of that organization since a long time, CC, can have a role today in trying to bring peace between Israel and Palestine?
Well, lately we have noticed that Israel and some Middle Eastern countries have signed a deal. Countries like the UAE, Bahrain, and others, they're trying to normalize relations. Egypt has normalized relations with Israel. Jordan has done it. But then, when you talk of the non-aligned movement, the non-aligned movement came into being, as you know, and I know, as everybody else knows, at the time of the Cold War, but then the Cold War is over. Now we don't have that kind of situation. But then, even though we don't have the Cold War, we have a number of little wars happening here and there, either in military form, either in armed form, or in economic ways. So, but personally, I think I don't think the non-aligned movement can be of much help here. Firstly, because of the changed circumstances in these times. Secondly, because the kind of great, illustrious national leaders we had at the beginning of the non-aligned movement, we had Jamal Abdel Nasser, we have Joseph Broz Tito, we have Jawaharlal Nehru. That level of leadership, that dynamism is not there. We have many leaders in the world today. But
okay, sir, thank you very much. We have come to the end of the time, and then inshallah, next time we will have a full course of 3 segments, and then we will discuss at ease. Thank you very much for being with us, and thank you for your time, sir. Thank you, viewers, for being with us, and we are sorry that we lost some time because of technical reasons. We hope that you have come out more informed than we were about Bangladesh, about diplomacy, about Israeli-Palestinian conflict.